During the 18th and early 19th century, the Lower Swansea Valley became the centre of the world's copper industry. The Cornish entrepreneur John Henry Vivian planned his works to operate as efficiently as possible and selected a prime location between the Swansea Canal and the River Tawe. Ore was imported in large quantities, first from Anglesey, Cornwall and Ireland, and later from Chile, Cuba and Australia. Earlier smelting works had been small and haphazard, but the building of the Hafod works in 1810 marked a new departure for the smelting industry. Coal could be brought down the valley on the canal and copper carried along the river from the nearby port. Vivian's works became one of the most important industrial and transport complexes in Great Britain. The smelting shed, also known as the Longhouse, was built during the first development of the Hafod works in 1808. This housed great banks of reverberatory furnaces for smelting of the copper ore. These furnaces were tended day and night by men working in long shifts in conditions of extreme heat. The furnaces were laid out in 2 long rows, fed from the top with copper ore and limestone. In between the furnaces were sunken pits or baths of cold water, into which the molten copper was channeled to cool it quickly and evenly into small granules. The furnaces were long, low structures which had different compartments to keep the fuel and the copper ore separate. Heat from the fire at one end was forced to pass over the copper ore, which was spread over the wide furnace bed by a draught created by the tall chimney at the other end. This kept the smelted metal free of contamination and therefore purer. The innovatory Welsh method of copper smelting required furnaces of different types, where copper ore was repeatedly roasted and refined up to 20 times to produce the highest quality copper. As the works became more successful, more furnaces were built, and by 1844 there were 95 in operation. The success of this method led to 90% of Britain's copper smelting being carried out within a 20-mile radius of Swansea. The Hafod copper works originally had rolling mills driven by water from the River Tawe, but by 1821 increasing production resulted in the mills becoming powered by steam engines. In 1910, the drive process was renewed with the arrival of a very efficient Musgrave Uniflow triple compound steam engine. Manufacture of these engines only began in Bolton in 1910, making the example at Hafod one of the earliest off the production line. The engine's efficiency is due to the fact that the steam generated by boilers is used not once but a total of 3 times. This exceptionally powerful 600 horsepower engine is still in the engine house at Hafod today and is an important survival. Copper from the furnaces was cast into solid blocks or ingots. Some of the copper was sold on in this basic form, but for other purposes the copper was rolled into thin sheets in the works' rolling mills. The ingots were reheated, and very skilled workers with long-handled iron tongs would feed the ingots backwards and forwards between revolving iron rolls, driven by the powerful steam engine. Alternatively, the copper could be beaten or stamped to make a wide range of fine copper products, including bowls and plates, and more utilitarian items such as boilers. One of the main uses for these thin copper sheets was cladding of the hulls of wooden naval vessels, a practice which coined the term copper-bottomed. The furnaces produced a huge amount of waste, which had to be removed from the work site, otherwise the buildings would have become completely buried. Over the years, no less than 3 enormous tips were built at Hafod. The first one was located next to the river, and by 1826 was already tall enough to require a small winding engine to haul waste to the top. By 1865, this site was full, and a large inclined viaduct was built westwards, creating a huge tip over 200 feet high. The third slag tip had to have a steam engine on its summit to pull up railway wagons loaded with hot slag to be tipped from the top of the vast heap. All three tips were removed during landscaping works in the mid-20th century. As production increased, concern grew about the amount of toxic gases that were released into the air. One of the main components of the fumes was sulphur. The Vivians created a solution to this problem in 1865 by adopting the Gerstenhofer process to turn the sulphur into sulphuric acid. A central flue was built to take the gases from the furnaces to a new sulphuric acid works built on top of the tip. Here, the sulphur was extracted in 20-foot-high lead-lined chambers to make a valuable side product which could be sold for use in the tin plate industry with a yearly value of £200,000. Every works provided houses for the manager and key workers, but the Vivians built many more facilities for their workers. The community that developed was known as Trevivian or Vivianstown, now known as Hafod, and houses were built partly using copper slag from the works, each with a garden where the workers could grow vegetables and keep pigs. By 1886, Vivian and Sons employed around 1,000 workers in the Hafod works alone, and Trevivian had expanded to include a whole range of facilities, including chapels, a church and a school where the children of copper workers could be educated in return for a small stoppage from their wages. By the end of the 19th century, Hafod was the largest copper works in the world. Amalgamation and takeovers followed in the 20th century, which enabled the site to carry on rolling copper until it finally closed in 1980. Since then, many of the buildings have disappeared, but the mark of the copper industry remains, both in the industrial remnants to be found along the banks of the Tower and the place names which record the impact of entrepreneurs such as Vivian, Morris and Grenfell.